let's read some of my comments. This is gonna be super fun. People get really worked up over softball and pitching. All right, starting off strong. There is no mound in softball. I said, what else should I say? Someone else responded, we call it the rubber. I'm not calling it the rubber. I'm gonna continue calling it the mound. Hey, Corey, she is a pork chop or fat pig, your choice. Somebody said, nobody take lessons from this woman. Somebody else responded and said, I come to the comments on every one of her videos to make sure someone has said it. Thank you guys so much for interacting with my videos. It gives me really good engagement. Why are you stepping back at the end instead of following through? Because you want front side resistance. So you don't want to run through the pitch because that takes away your power. You want all your energy to collide in one spot instead of trying to run through it. So think of it like it would not be faster to run the ball to home plate because you don't have any front side resistance. Everything is going forward. You want everything to come together and get that power explosive movement in one spot. Wow, how does she get her arm around that fat gut? I responded and said very carefully. Aren't crow hops legal now? Not that I want them to be. I don't think crow hopping is legal because every time I ask an umpire, they say, no, it's not legal, but umpires are not calling it in games and they're just not consistent. Why is the knee squeeze with the foot off the ground? I have them start with that to have them engage their whole leg. If you notice with your foot up off the ground, you can feel a little bit of a burn in your hamstring. That's gonna help you use your legs to your full potential, just using the full body to get the most power out of your pitch. As you advance, you don't have to have that foot up, but I would definitely start with that foot up for at least the first year of pitching. What percentage of strikes do you recommend before teaching or throwing a changeup? I responded at least 50% plus 50 miles per hour from the walkthrough minimum. The reason why I say at least those requirements because you should have control over your motion. You should know what you're doing with the fastball before you advance, and you should be getting at least 50 miles an hour because if you're throwing a changeup when your pitch is already slow, it's going to be really slow. So the point of a changeup is to throw something slower. Why would you throw something slower when you're already slow? So get your speed up first and your control and then start throwing that changeup. For having a new pitcher in a game when they can throw 50-50, how game-like does that evaluation need to be? Just 50-50 throwing to a coach or 50-50 live BP at a practice or something in between? Okay, so that was the first half of that person's comment about when to put a pitcher into the game. And I responded saying 50% strikes with no batter before throwing to batters. So in practice, without any pressure of any batters and in the zone, all the strikes getting 50%, so at least 25 out of 50 pitches getting strikes, then start putting them in the game. Sometimes they respond by getting really nervous and not throwing as many strikes. Sometimes they thrive off of the pressure and the competitiveness and throw more strikes, or sometimes they stay at 50% strikes. So I would say the good time to see how they do in a game or against batters is when they're throwing 50% strikes in practices at least for like 3 weeks. The second half of the comment says, also for other topic requests, would love something about game day routines / prep and mental strategies. Routines are super important to help you not think about so much. So that's why it's so important to work on your muscle memory and practice and have certain drills that you want to go through every single time you pitch, whether it's game day or not. So every time you practice, every time you're in a game, you're doing the same drills, the same amount to warm up. And confidence comes from two things. One, from being familiar with situations, and two, from within. So being familiar with situations, practice, practice, practice. And from within, tell yourself that you're a baddie and that you are the best on the field and believe it. Suggestions on how many times per week to practice for how many hours. If you're a beginner, the first year of your pitching, you're just working on getting strikes, throw 100 pitches every day and try to get as many of them to be strikes as possible and just work on getting your form to be good. After the beginning stage, start practicing at least 4 times a week. Just try not to take more than 2 days off in a row. And throughout the week, you should have different type of practice days. So a couple days a week, you're doing shorter, like 20, 30-minute bullpens where you're throwing like 75 to 100 pitches. And then the rest of the week, you're doing longer practices, so maybe 45 minutes to an hour. And then at least one other day in the week doing a scrimmage-like situation just so that you can throw for more innings in games. So throw for like 10 minutes, take a rest for like 10 minutes, throw for like 10 minutes, and do it for like an hour and a half, just like a game. How do I work on getting almost all my pitches, strikes, and accurate, or drills that help? You gotta practice every day, set achievable but challenging goals. So if you start out with throwing 3 strikes in a row as your goal, then start with that. Try to get 3 strikes in a row as many times as possible. Try to hit a very specific spot over and over and over again, and don't move on to something else before you can do the same thing over and over and over again with precision. How do you handle getting pulled as a pitcher when there is fielding errors? I responded, don't take it personal, is to change momentum. So if you are getting pulled for something that is not your fault, it is still not your fault. You should not take it to heart and be like, oh my gosh, I was pulled because someone else. Yeah, you were not pulled for your problem. You did your job. They just need to change the momentum for the team. Be a team player. I'm Coach Emily. I'm a pitching coach. Follow me for more pitcher tips and softball talk.